everybody, it's your boy Gsluke here for our round 2 prize picks targets for this week's PGA Championship. We have round 1 in the books, a super difficult golf course. In fact, even more difficult than I expected, so it didn't quite go our way, but like I said, once we have a little bit of information in our back pocket, we know a little bit more about this venue, what to expect in terms of the playing conditions, it is going to be ripe for the taking. So here for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I am expecting it to go even better than what it did for round 1. And even though we went just 2 for 5 on our main card, if you guys watched the Discord server preview that I did just there on Wednesday, you know that it went a whole lot better, right? We had plays like a Jordan Spieth over on fairways and guys like a John Rahm, also a few other props like under on these Brooks Koepka fairways we had, also the under on Tiger Woods at 74 and a half strokes, and also the over Tiger Woods on birdies. So we ended up going, I believe it ended up being 6 for 8 on the day, so not quite as bad as what it could have been, and overall ended up being just a slight loss for us, right? So we did end up profiting, which is going to happen from time to time, but again, with this extra knowledge that we have, now that we know what to expect here for the rest of the tournament, I'm much more confident about our stance here. So like I said, a preview here for round 2, and we're going to be covering my top 5 props and some of the research that I'm doing for putting together these cards. So with that being said, a lot to get into. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, we'll start as per usual with a look at round 1, just to get an idea of what to expect tomorrow. And like I said, a difficult golf course, a scoring average approaching 3 strokes over par. And given the strength of field, you know how difficult this place is. If it was a regular tour event, this 2.82 shots over par could have very easily been 4.5, 5 strokes over par. And going into the week, we expected this type of teeth. And today, the winds were just in the 10 to 20 mile an hour range. They were there, they were present. They made themselves certainly felt towards the afternoon, but they weren't drastic. They weren't overdone, right? They were doable for the players. Guys like Rory McIlroy took it to 5 under par in the morning, and guys like Justin Thomas were able to take it to 3 under par in the afternoon. So certainly scores were still out there, but also a lot of bogeys in bunches. Guys like Brooks Koepka shot 5 over par, 6 over par for guys like a Patrick Cantlay, both of which I was on this week, unfortunately, and that just shows you the difficulty. Those type of players aren't shooting 5 to 6 over par very often, right? So you know the type of teeth that's out there, and if you take a look at the weather, it isn't going away. In fact, if anything, it's even more difficult here on Friday, specifically in the morning where we have 20 to 15 miles an hour of sustained winds for much of the AM wave, but even more notably, 35 to 45 miles an hour of wind gusts, which is by far the more important factor when it comes to weather on the PGA Tour. When the winds will change, 15 to 20 miles an hour from what they're standing at usually, which is that 15 to 20 mile an hour range. Not only is it hard to tell, how many clubs to actually hit extra, or how many clubs to club down when you're playing downwind, you also have it changing, right? So it might go from a 2 club difference down to a 1 club difference when you have that 20 mile an hour difference like you have between the sustained winds and the wind gusts that we have here. So the bigger and bigger this difference gets, the harder and harder the conditions are going to be. So as the day goes on, you can see it gets slightly easier, right? It goes down to about 14 to 10 miles an hour of sustained winds for much of the afternoon. The wind gusts go from right around 40, 35 miles an hour down to 28, down to 20, down to right around 17 to 15 for the rest of the afternoon. So it is going to get easier as the day goes on. So typically we're trying to target guys in the morning because they're out there on more receptive greens. Could not be more different tomorrow. We're going to be targeting guys that are trying to play towards the PM wave, or at the very earliest starting rate around noon. With that being said, what props do I like? So this will be a 5-leg card, of course, going for that 12.5x return. And for the most part, you can see it's with strokes. So we'll start with the guys that I'm supporting. First and foremost, going to be Max Homa at 72 strokes. This is a par 70, I'll remind you. So a 72, you're wanting him to shoot +1 or better to hit, +2 to push. We don't want to talk about what happens if he doesn't hit, but in either circumstance, today was pretty sharp. In fact, at one point was 3 under par, was tied for the lead. Now down the stretch, kind of fell apart, but the ball striking was there. The putting kind of abandoned him for holes 6 through 12, I'd say, on the scorecard. Outside of that, he was making plenty of putts, and really the only place he got into trouble was off the tee. He had a few really scary shots off the tee where he hit the ball pretty far left. He also Really overcooked one to the right as well with the slice. So it wasn't good to see him missing both left and right. But most people were hitting 10 to 12 plus fairways at this golf course. They're 40 yards wide on average. In fact, guys like Abraham Answer were able to hit 12 fairways yesterday. Somebody actually did take the under on, so I got burned there a little bit. But that just shows you how many that people were hitting, right? People were able to hit 12 out of the 14, just otherworldly type of percentages when it comes to fairway. So Max Homa, even though he was killed by that in round one, I highly doubt that really rears its head here in round two. And other than the off the tee play, he was excellent on approach. The putter was there, like I said, for a majority of the holes today. And tomorrow, for him to just shoot better than +1, right? He just has to replicate what he does today, and he has that room for improvement. So I like the fact that he's teeing off when he is. I like the skill set. Obviously, coming off the win at the Wells Fargo Championship, you're talking about a player in immaculate form. So somebody I have no problem supporting here for the second round. Next up, we have Tony Finau, also at 72 strokes. And these two picks would be my favorite, right? Max Homa and Tony Finau. If you're asking for my quote-unquote or hashtag locks out there, they would be my quote-unquote locks for this slate. And Tony Finau also at the same number. Very similar statistical profile. Now, today he shot 1 under par. Also gets to tee off in the PM wave. Off the tee was a little bit inaccurate, so also dealt with some issues, but has that room for improvement. And outside of that, the putter was very cooperative. And for Tony Finau, that's kind of the X factor. Somebody that can struggle with the flat stick from time to time, can lose in bunches with his shots gained putting. But today was adequate, right? Wasn't stellar, but got the job done. And at a major championship, that's all we're looking for. And on this prop market, right, where we're just hoping he shoots 1 over or better, that ball striking prowess where he's not putting himself in much trouble is exactly the kind of player I'm looking for. So I expect him to go out there, make 3, maybe 4 birdies on the day. So even if he has some bogeys, to be able to offset that, because with his elite length, he is one of the few players in the field easily able to reach both of these 640 plus yard par 5s, which is an extra stroke and a half, 2-stroke difference in his back pocket. Next up, we have Will Zalatoris. He's the last guy I'm taking under on in terms of strokes, and I have him there at 71.5. Today, of course, shot 4 under par, was up there in contention after the first round, and not a surprise. He's a major championship killer, somebody who, of course, his first ever start at the U.S. Open ended up cracking the top 25. Now, not many people knew of him at that point, but his next time out at the Masters, when he finished second, right, he broke out onto that world stage. He's a immaculate ball striker, very similar to a Max Homa and a Tony Finau. So not a surprise that I'm really hunkering down on these players that are known for that ability, but also somebody that gained a ton of strokes on the greens today. And while that can be a little bit worrisome at times, not for Willie Z, because that's what it comes down to. If he has that putter, he's going to go out there and look absolutely electric. So for whatever reason, on bent grass, that's the surface that we have for the greens this week. He is his best self. That's at the Masters, the same surface they have. He gained over 7 strokes his first appearance there on the greens. And this year was able to gain over 3 strokes on the greens. So there's something there. And for his career, gaining over half a stroke per round on bent grass. So it's not just, the 2 Masters that he's played in where he's played well on the surface. It's been for his entire career. So if we can expect that consistency to be there with the putter, the ball striking is going to be top 5 in pretty much every category for Will Zalatoris, and I expect the absolute world from him going into round 2. And now lastly, we have our 2 fades, and one of them is going to be on strokes, one will be on birdies or better. So first off, why do we do fades? Just gets you to the 12.5x. We're supporting these 3 players here with strokes. Of course, taking the under is a supportive stance. We're expecting them to play well, not go out there and have that many strokes. Taking the over on strokes, of course, is assuming that they don't play well. Taking the under on birdies or better is assuming that they don't make that many birdies. Of course, a negative stance. The reason why we do that, 3 overs or 3 supportive stances and then 3 negative stances, is that gets you the extra value. That takes it from a 10x parlay up to a 12.5x. Now, let's say we wanted to take all quote-unquote overs or supportive stances. You can see they would only pay us 8x value. So it would really hamper our payout there. Even with a 4-leg flex here, so if we went with that, you can see it just goes to an 8x type of parlay. So pretty much no matter what category you go with, you want to make sure that you're taking overs and unders. So I get asked that question a lot, why I do that type of strategy with my cards. That's the thought process. So With that being said, let's talk about the John Daly prop, where I have the over at 77.5 strokes. And he was a legend today, right? We took the over 0.5 birdies. Meant to mention that on the intro. Of course, that was a prop that we hammered there and came through on the first hole. So, of course, a lot of excitement behind it. Ended up shooting just 2 over today, so had a really solid round. But he was 84.5 strokes yesterday. He went down over 7 strokes in terms of his projection. He's playing in the afternoon, which is the advantageous wave, but it's still going to play harder tomorrow afternoon than it did today. And today it played to nearly 3 strokes over par. And that's for the average player. John Daly, for as much of a legend as he is, as much as we enjoy what he did for us today, he's not an above average player. In fact, at this point, he's a well below average player. So in terms of a projection, I have him projected for closer to 79 strokes and something at 77.5. And he's also an extremely volatile player. If he's not having his best stuff, he knows he's not very likely to make the cut this week. He could very well just pack it up. And I don't mean just quit. I mean just go out there and not be very engaged, right? Not take all the time on his preparation. Maybe don't read putts as well as you should, that sort of thing. And he could really get close to 80 real quickly. So I'm just not really interested in trying to invest in that type of player. And as a result, we'll be fading him, and he'll be one of our steps to get to that 12.5x value. Lastly, we have our last fade, which is going to be Tom Hoagy at 2.5 birdies. I'm taking the under there because his performance today, though he is in the top 3, obviously, almost ended up being first round leader. It was all with the putter. He gained over 2.5 strokes with the flat stick. And if you know anything about Tom Hoagy's game, he is not a solid putter. In fact, for his career, one of the worst putters that we've seen. At least that's an elite tier player of the top 50 in the official World Golf Rankings. He's a ball striking specialist, will gain off the tee, gain around the green, and with the approach play, but is consistently going to lose to the field. So the fact that he gained in bulk in round 1, that's a little bit, we want to see that with Will Zalatoris, right? We've seen that for his career on this surface. It's good to see Tony Feno have success because he's done that from time to time. Tom Hoagy hardly ever gains to the field in that category. In fact, today he lost strokes off the tee around the green. He was hardly a gainer to the field. If it weren't for the putting, he would have shot something like 1 under, maybe even par on the day. So at 2.5 birdies, I'm expecting him to keep himself in position with the ball striking, but I really doubt his chances to go out there and actually cash in those birdies. So for me, going to be a fade. Of course, if you don't want to get to the 12.5x, you could always just take the 2 fades out. They're usually my least confident picks, and that is certainly the same case for this slate. Go and just add another sport, right? I showed this on the last video. It doesn't matter what sport, doesn't matter what prop, take it and it completely reverts you to the regular payout system, right? So a 4-leg power play would be a 10x. Took another one, right? It'd be a 10x for the flex play, right? Like you would normally get for most sports. All right, that's all for the round 2 picks. Before you hop on out of here, go ahead and let me know what your favorite prop on the board is. Comment that down below. I always love to hear from you. And also, make sure you go ahead and smash that like button. It helps me with growing the channel. Also lets me know that you enjoy this type of content. So I'd appreciate that. Make sure you go ahead and comment and like. And as per usual, we'll have videos dropping for rounds 3 and 4. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. We'll be dropping hopefully a little bit sooner into the night. It was a little bit backed up today with some of the fantasy content that I had on the docket, but better late than never. So best of luck here for round 3, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.